Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have another great business owner. I always love having business owners on from North Carolina because, maybe I'm just partial because I live in North Carolina. I grew up in the Carolinas, so it's always great to have other great business owners on. But, when you talk about a business in the construction space, it's a space that people understand that construction happens, but most people don't really understand the business of construction. So I'm super excited to have Jimmy Dillahunt on to talk about his business, what his journey's been like. So welcome to the show, Jimmy.
Hey, thanks, Terrell, for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. My pleasure. Glad to have you on. So, before we jump into the details and talking about, your business and construction, what was your background before launching this business?
Well, that's a good question, Terrell. My background, my family. It's funny. It's been a journey. My family was in the construction business for a very long time. Still are. Um, I even went to school for it over at East Carolina University. Work construction, growing up as a kid and just really developed the love for it. And I thoroughly enjoy it. I love working with people, love being able to make an impact in the community also. So, I've done it on on the small scale, and I've done it on a large scale. Been very, very fortunate, during my tenure in this business to meet people, from different walks of life.
Mhm. Awesome. That brings up a very interesting point. With, being that your family was in the industry, when you were coming up, like, were there ever any points where you had some apprehension to say, nah, I just want to do my own thing?
Yeah. My dad is he's old school. Saturday morning, a lot of kids are, watching Saturday morning cartoons and kind of chilling out. And my dad said, no, we're going to work. And I'm like, I want to watch cartoons. And he said, no, I'm gonna teach you a trade. So a couple of times on some Saturday mornings, I was like, man, I don't ever want to, I don't ever want to see this stuff again. I want to be, want to be a kid, but I look back on it now, and I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Awesome. So, I'm always curious that, when you go that journey of, like I said, working in construction, do most people go the route of developing kind of, the craft or working in a specific area within construction and then just gradually learn the other parts of the business? Or do they go in with the intention of my goal is to figure out how to run the entire business?
You know what? That's another excellent question. I would answer it. I think depending on what track someone decides to go. Some people love being outdoors. They love being in the field, and they kind of head down a more, a more operational type of role. And then there's some people that they don't want to be out in the elements, going through, fall, winter, the seasons, and they're more of going down the executive business track. So I think I think it depends. In my opinion, I think in order to be successful at either, you really need to be familiar with with both. If you're going down the executive route, you might want to know what you're presiding over and managing. And it helps when you've got a little bit of field experience.
Gotcha.
Or if you're going to go into or if you're going to go into the to the craft, well, you really want to understand the numbers and what the guys what the guys on the executive end are going to be looking at. So I think I think having having your getting your feet wet in both just helps make you better at either being an executive or in a on an operational end of things.
Gotcha. So for your personal journey, at what point did you start to, like I said, transition from, like I said, doing and learning the trade to starting to learn the business side of construction?
Well, It's interesting. They didn't pay attention to labor laws that much when I got started. So I ended up on a job site, several years. I started with a broom and a shovel, graduated to a hammer, then graduated to power tools and started doing some things along the heavy equipment line of things, operating. And eventually I kind of earned my way into to a lead man position, and it progressed. It progressed from a lead man to a foreman to a superintendent to a project manager. So I went through all of the progressions to kind of get to to the position I'm in now. And I really think you really find a lot of your best managers when they've had some time in the roles that they ultimately would be managing. And I can say, there's not very many roles that I haven't had the fortunate opportunity, or depending on what time of the year, it may have been unfortunate because like today it's 93 degrees, and those guys putting in asphalt and doing concrete. I mean, when you've been out there yourself and it's hot. I mean, it makes you appreciate some of the days that like today, I'm indoors behind a laptop, and kind of managing it more or less of having my hands in the weeds of it. Still do that when I need to, but just not as often.
Awesome, awesome. So and now, can you give us an idea of like the size of your construction company? Like, where do you guys work on construction projects? Are you statewide, regional, national, international?
You know what? We're domiciled out of North and South Carolina, but we actually work. We're licensed. We work in Virginia. We hold an unclassified, unlimited license in North Carolina. We also have an office in South Carolina, and we also do work in Georgia. And we've actually been as far as California to do work also.
Awesome, awesome. So, what was it like, on the business side of just having to learn, hey, the rules that apply in North Carolina versus Virginia versus Georgia, then you go all the way out to California. Did you find similarities, or did you get into that realizing like, oh, we don't do that in North Carolina?
You know what? That's a great question. I think it was the first time. It was it wasn't it was a learning process. Then the second time we said, you know what, we need to make sure before we get somewhere, if we know we're going to be working somewhere that we're not used to, let's find a local a local relationship that we can leverage to try to make working in a different area than we're familiar with. Let's try to kind of partner with someone to make it a little bit easier. And so far, knock on wood, that's been very successful for us.
I always find that to be an interesting thing. I mean, when you start expanding, because even for myself, as as a CPA, we do accounting, bookkeeping, and CFO services. And when people start reaching out, like, oh, you can expand your business here, and I'm like, well, I got to make sure I understand the rules there.
Yep, yep, yeah. Because everywhere you go is completely different. One of the things I learned in California, and our insurance company taught us, is when you get into California, our insurer said, we don't write California, and we literally had to go out and get a separate policy, and we didn't think about it at the time, but California is very unionized, and some insurers will and won't write, they will and they won't write in California. And that's, stuff like that. We kind of developed a little checklist to make sure if we're going into a new area, we just kind of make sure we check the boxes, because when you've got some good clients that want you to travel with them, God knows where you're going to end up. I mean, I mean, like I said, we've worked in West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas, California, Kentucky, Arizona. We've gotten around a little bit.
Wow, you guys have been pretty busy.
Yes, yes. It's been good through through the ups and downs and the pandemics and all of that good stuff. So it's been a journey.
Mhm. And now, speaking of the pandemic, I mean, when it comes down to construction, one of the things that, I've seen here in Charlotte to where, you know, my wife and I used to work in downtown Charlotte, and there had been like months since we had been down there. We drove down there. We were like, wow, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Did you find you guys, that you guys were still, cranking through projects and work during the pandemic, or did things kind of slow down for you guys?
You know what? I would say we had a little hiccup through the pandemic, but it wasn't like some of the good people that work in like the restaurant industry. My heart really went out to the restaurant industry during COVID because I mean a lot of the restrictions made it really tough on restaurants and I think a lot of those guys had to get creative, and I really tipped my hat. I tipped my hat to the DoorDashes and the Uber Eats of the world because I think that's what really pulled a lot of these restaurants through the pandemic. So I think some of them never did take out, and all of a sudden we get a pandemic, and you learn to figure out what it takes to survive.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, no, I think that that is a very interesting thing that we've definitely seen across the board, and it brings me to my next question is as you kind of navigated that, what was it like in your position of keeping your team motivated, keeping them energized as you kind of work through whatever the ups and downs may be in the business.
You, that's a really interesting question. It was different because you have the economy which is kind of up and down. You have your booms and then you have your recessions. COVID was a little bit unusual because there was so much uncertainty about it because no one had ever seen anything like COVID. Um, the team knew we had a fair amount of work that we had ongoing and coming up in the future, and really, really all our guys have a tight bond with one another. They ask about one another's family, and I think the bond that they have, and seeing the company's commitment to them is really what successfully got us through COVID, in fairly good shape.
Awesome. That that is an amazing thing that I've heard about. Like just as people progress into from being a tradesman of they do their craft to then running the business to then having to manage the people aspect and then all of the all the non I guess you say non-direct business impacts that you now have to consider and said being able to keep your people motivated, keep them informed, keep them engaged. Have there been any things that's really helped you kind of make that transition as a leader in your business and learn and grow as a leader?
You know what? Sure, because the guys know, my background. They know I've been in the trenches. I've gotten my hands dirty. I still get my hands dirty. If we're short-handed guys, I don't mind rolling up my sleeves and getting out in the field, with the guys to make sure that we meet our obligations to our clients. And the guys really respect that. It makes them work harder when they see, hey, the boss is out here and he's doing it too. So, why, we need to step it up. We're not gonna have this old guy outwork me.
Gotcha. So now speaking of the awesome things that your construction company is doing, if people want to keep an eye to see, hey, what's the latest projects you guys been doing or what you guys are up to, where can they find you guys online or on social media?
You know what? We've got a Facebook page that stays fairly active. It shows kind of shows some of the things that the company can do, whether it's demolition, whether it's site work, whether it's underground utilities, commercial buildings. That's one of the things that that has made us that's made us successful is being versatile. We've got a lot of our guys that are multifaceted, which allows them to wear a couple different hats depending on what we're doing. And it's good, it's good to have your hands in a couple of pots and be able to to pivot, because if you run into something like a COVID and and you're limited to one thing and you have to learn something else, you don't want that to be out of necessity. You'd rather have it be organic.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I love it. I love it. And then when they're going on, social media, what do they search for to be able to find you guys?
I want to say if you put in like construction, underground utilities, Raleigh construction companies, I think you can pull us up there, and some of the guys on the team and some of our capabilities are pretty well demonstrated on our Facebook page. And we've also got a page on LinkedIn that, a homepage on LinkedIn that really shows some of our capabilities. We've actually got, we should be launching our website here fairly soon too, as well.
Awesome. Awesome. I love to hear that. So before we wrap up, one question that I always like to ask every guest that comes on, I mean, as you've kind of navigated from, where you've been in your journey, and you navigate where you are now and looking forward, what's 2 lessons that you've kind of learned that you would share with other business owners?
You know what? If I had to share an important lesson with 2 lessons with the business owner. Lesson 1, I would say, be cautious who you work for. Sometimes not everyone is invested in the success of each other. Because when you're invested in the success of each other, an owner and a contractor, normally you end up with a successful project. Mm-hmm. And making sure that who you're going to be working for is extremely important, because one situation could all of a sudden, cause you to spend time away from your business, or cause you a monetary loss that that it may take you 2 or 3 years to recover from. And sometimes, I tell people, I said, sometimes the best job is the one you didn't take. And, a lot of, that's resonated with a lot of people, because I've had people, I've told that to people, and they say, Jimmy, you know what, I decided to pass on a job, and, just keeping an eye on it, or a year later, they said, I heard it was a nightmare. And they said, I'm glad you told me that. Awesome. And if I had to say, 2, I would say, make sure you keep an open mind, allow people around you to be creative. Just because something hasn't been done before doesn't mean it can't be done. That means no one's done it yet. And if you allow the people that you surround yourself with and empower them, to be creative, you can come up with some really neat ideas, and, be a leader in your, in your field, and kind of set the standard for innovation and new techniques, which is, kind of always ongoing.
Awesome. I absolutely love it. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like our content, be sure to follow us on social media. And if you want to see more of our exclusive content, you can subscribe and become a member on patreon.com/Business Talk Library. Hey, the Business Talk Library is the place where business makes sense.